Let me first recognize the Honorable Desmond McKenzie, Minister of Local Government and Community Development, Honorable Dr. Nigel Clark, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Ms. Angela Brown-Burke, who is representing the opposition, and of course, the Honorable, or should I say His Worship, the Mayor of Kingston. I will ask that you permit me to observe the protocols that were set in the opening, because if I go through that entire list, then I'm going to be in trouble, because I know I'm supposed to bring greetings, but I'm known to say a few words too many. And I wanted to add just a few to my comments, which I did not script, but to recognize the contributions of His Worship. Myself being an urban planner who practiced very briefly in the field, but believe that that is the pathway to solving a lot of our challenges we're facing in terms of this issue of resilience and risk. So I was very much encouraged by your articulate encapsulation in those, as you said, 2 to 3 key messages. Friends, excellencies, representatives, media, in 1 year, the 7th Regional Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in the Americas and the Caribbean will be convened in Montego Bay, Jamaica, during the period the 8th to the 10th of July, under the theme, Building Economic Resilience in the Americas and the Caribbean. And I'm sure you're wondering, you've heard the term RP20, you've heard Regional Platform, and you're wondering, what is that? What is a Regional Platform? It's not simply a conference, it's a space where practitioners in disaster risk reduction, stakeholders, actors across the whole of government, private sector, the academia, or elected officials come together to look at this particular issue, to celebrate some successes, but to share experiences so that we can all learn from each other and to take this back into our own spaces to address some of the challenges we face. But it's also an opportunity, I think, for us to create and foster new partnerships in our journey towards resilience. This event is significant, as this will be the very, very first time the regional platform will be held in the Caribbean, and it will be held within a CARICOM state. And I think that's a significant achievement that deserves a round of applause. The Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency is an institution of the Caribbean community, which is comprised of its organs, the Ministerial Council, and the Technical Advisory Committee, along with membership, which constitutes 18 member governments, inclusive of Jamaica. It is therefore a pleasure for me to support the government and people of Jamaica in hosting this event. Building resilience has been a central theme of CDEMA since the agency's establishment in 1991. And this is reinforced through the current Regional Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy, which has the goal of safer, more resilient, and sustainable participating states. Over the years, the Caribbean region has been making some strategic strides in advancing disaster risk reduction and management. The Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategic Framework is promoted and being advanced throughout the region, and it has been officially recognized by UNDRR as the Caribbean Regional Framework for the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030, a blueprint for global actions in disaster risk reduction. In this regard, CDEMA has a strong ongoing collaborative relationship with UNDRR in harmonizing the performance monitoring framework of the Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy to simultaneously support monitoring, evaluation, and reporting on the progress towards delivering on agreed results between the CDM strategy and the Sendai framework. And for that matter, we're looking at how it can be harmonized to better deliver on the reporting on the SDGs, to reduce complexities. CDEMA being mindful of the need to support greater efficiency in the reporting of our participating states and noting the strides, challenges, and opportunities and the yet untold stories of progress within the Caribbean region, has been advocating with UNDRR for the Caribbean to host a regional platform recognizing the significant contribution the Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy has made in advancing the intent of both the Sendai Framework commitments and its predecessor, the Hyogo Framework of Action. In acknowledgement of this demonstrative initiative and commitment to disaster risk reduction in national, regional, and global arena, the Sedema family is therefore pleased that Jamaica will be the first Caribbean nation to host this event. The region and Jamaica have been at the forefront historically of the disaster risk management discourse. Many of you may remember the Decade for Disaster Risk Reduction. Jamaica was central in that conversation. The framing of the Yokohama strategy. Then we had Franklin MacDonald, who was head of ODPEM, and somewhere between NEPA and ODPEM, engaged in the conversation around the Yokohama strategy. We had the OHRS Plus 10 event, OHRS event and the OHRS Plus 10 event. And in the lead up to the Hyogo Framework of Action in 2005, we had the Kingston Declaration here that launched the Caribbean's input into the framing of the Hyogo Framework of Action. So I think it is fitting that the regional platform comes home to be hosted in Jamaica, Minister. Following the devastating impacts of the 2017 hurricane events and recognizing the complex vulnerability to various hazards in the Caribbean region, the heads of government of the Caribbean community has reinforced resilience as a central theme for the Caribbean. However, resilience must be transformational. We must be able to define it. We must be able to chart our way towards it. And so Emily spoke about the experience in Geneva, and Sedema has been piloting what we call the Caribbean Pathway for Resilience, built on five fundamental pillars: social protection for the poor and most vulnerable, enhancing economic opportunities, which are a companion. If you're going to pull people out of poverty, you have to create new economic opportunities. Enhancing critical infrastructure, recognizing that most of our losses is in the infrastructure sector. Looking at environmental resilience. We derive our wealth, well-being from our natural environment. It is a natural buffer to some of the hazards we face. And fifth, look in at operational readiness for response and recovery. It's going to be the order of the day. If you go back into history, to the 1700s, 1600s, you see reports of strong hurricanes impacting the Caribbean and causing loss of lives. So we've been facing it, we will continue to face it. So we have to plan to be able to deal with those eventualities. Resilience is not built overnight. And when we reflect on the planning agenda, you realize how far away we are from where we need to be in terms of well-built cities and communities. In focusing on rebuilding the countries affected by Hurricanes Irma and Maria, the Caribbean community at the donor conference held in New York in 2017 has declared a vision of the Caribbean being the first climate-resilient region in the world, and buttressed that through the desire of the region for a holistic approach to addressing risk from all hazards to achieve resilient development. This ambitious aspiration, as well as the goal of the Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy, which also seeks to achieve safer and more resilient, sustainable Caribbean, demands critical attention. According to the Global Report on Economic Losses, Poverty, and Disasters between 1998 to 2017, published by the CRED in 2018, there are some key messages emerging that reinforces this Caribbean resilience imperative within the global context. One, the 2017 hurricane season was remarkable in terms of the number of Category 5 cyclones that swept in quick succession across numerous vulnerable Caribbean island states and made landfall in Central and North America as well. For the period 1998 to 2017, hurricanes that swept through the Caribbean and made landfall in the Americas caused the greatest economic losses of all climate-related disasters, both in absolute terms and in a percentage of gross domestic product. In fact, the heaviest cost of storms relative to the size of their economies fell on small island states in the Caribbean. This is why our story needs to be told. We're indeed a laboratory for disaster risk. Many of the solutions were also developed within the Caribbean. All of the top 10 worst affected countries, territories in terms of losses as a percentage of GDP, were small Caribbean countries and territories. In review of the last 2 decades, the impacts of hurricanes Irma and BVI, Maria in Dominica, Ivan in Grenada in 2004, Hurricane Georges in 1998 in St. Kitts and Nevis, Hurricane Erika in 2015 in Dominica, are all in the top 10 climate-related disaster losses as a percentage of GDP between 1998 and 2017. The figures are telling us something. This is not just a story of just relative losses, but absolute losses. It should be noted that about It should be noted that absolute losses resulting from Hurricanes Irma and Maria, Ike in 2018, Ivan in 2004, are amongst the top 10 climate-related disasters for absolute losses for 1998 to 2017 period due to their impact on the Caribbean and on the United States. We also recognize that it is not just the climate-related hazards, but it is all hazards. The country of Haiti has had significant impacts from the 2010 earthquake, but we also note that as a low-income country, Haiti has the highest average annual percentage losses relative to GDP and stands at 17.5%, reinforcing the link between disasters, development, and poverty. The Caribbean is often referred to as being located in the second most hazard-prone area of the world. The result for the last 2 decades is placing us amongst the most vulnerable based on economic losses from disasters. This has much to do with climate-related hazards. In fact, the Global Assessment Report 2019 calls climate change the great risk amplifier. The Caribbean, therefore, looks forward to RP20 as we see this as not only creating an opportunity to assess jointly with the participating countries of the Americas and the Caribbean the advances for building a resilient economies and societies, but also the ability to share the knowledge, the experiences gained, and to assess further actions and commitments towards disaster risk reduction. In placing it at the center of the conversation, the achievements and gaps in achieving resilient economies, we will become a part of a great movement which builds the resilience of communities and nations to disaster risk. I am therefore honored to bring greetings on behalf of the management, staff, the Council of Ministers, and the wider community of SEDIMA this morning. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in Montego Bay next year.